Right then, so welcome. I'm here today with Kat, who's a freelance writer, translator, and yoga teacher living on a semi-off-grid homestead in Lithuania, along with many animal friends. She's figured out a way to support her rural lifestyle by working remotely and tapping into several different niches. Kat's approach to sustainable living is honest, realistic, and recognizing that Instagram moments only show a fraction of the hard work and financial demands that go into maintaining a home, managing land, animals, all while trying to protect your inner peace. So, welcome, Kat. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I really want to just we can just dive into how we know each other, I guess, to start with. So, um, actually, rewind to 20, I think it was 2019, was it when you came to the farm in Spain?
Honestly, time seems to have warped. It was either 2018 or 2019. It was around then.
I think it
Um,
was, yeah, I think it was 2019 because we moved off grid to Spain in 2018, and I think you came in the March. So Kat came along to kind of come and stay with us when we were living at our off grid farm. And at the time, you were kind of looking for property in Spain, weren't you? That was kind of like the idea because you wanted to do like the whole off grid living, homesteading. So yeah, just kind of if you'd love to dive in and tell me a little bit about your journey, like what kind of led you to wanting to live this homestead life and how you ended up moving back to Lithuania.
so it wasn't like a sudden thing. It was a very gradual process. And I think a lot of us go through this as we mature, as we grow up, we figure out what we want from life and who we are as people. And also, the more you know about the world, the more you kind of um, it stirs you in a certain direction. And so at the time, living in Birmingham, the UK, quite a big city, you had to figure out a way to survive. So unless you were quite lucky, you had to really hustle. And it just wasn't for us. My partner and I at the time, we had an allotment because we wanted something to connect with nature. We did camping, climbing, nature type things. And the dream ultimately would be to live somewhere that is more where there's more access to that sort of thing, where you don't have to drive for hours to get into nature, where you don't have to drive or cycle to the allotment, where you have your own garden. And initially, we actually looked at North Wales because it's really, really beautiful there. There was a lot of rock climbing there. Um, Semi-accessible compared to a lot of England. Then, yeah, through some people, we found out about you and Jack, and funnily enough, didn't know each other, kind of just invited ourselves to your farm, came to visit, and thought, okay, well, Spain is also a really good option because Spanish is also a nice language and more accessible to learn than Welsh. Had a look at some properties. I don't know if the situation is different now, but at the time there were a lot of properties. There were a lot more affordable.
Mhm.
I'm talking only a few dozen thousand euro. So yeah, the idea was to maybe fundraise some money or turn it into a retreat because I'm a yoga teacher. And then the pandemic hit and everything kind of went down. The plans didn't develop at all. But ultimately, it did give us a push to think what we can do with the small amount of resources that we had, because we didn't have a lot of money, and we never considered Lithuania previously because it has no rock climbing, and that was such an integral part of our lives. But at the end of the day, during the pandemic, you couldn't do that anyway.
Mhm.
So we'd considered that. We had a look at properties, were surprised by the cheap prices, had a look at the way it works with cars and car insurance and ownership and health insurance and all the legal stuff. Obviously, a lot easier because I'm a Lithuanian citizen and because I speak the language, so I had access to those resources. And It's actually even funny that even as we booked the flight to come to Lithuania, to move to Lithuania, we had to book a car because we didn't have a car initially. And if you search for rental cars in Lithuania in English, then you get higher pricing than if you search for rental cars in Lithuanian.
There's a top.
So I definitely had an advantage there, being a native. And I guess we got kind of lucky with this property. We had looked quite far away from the capital because that's where properties were the cheapest. And it wasn't a specific goal to get an off-grid property, but realistically, a lot of the cheaper properties here are semi or fully off-grid just because they're old houses, abandoned properties, old homesteads and farms. So that's how we ended up in this little cottage.
Wow.
Quite luckily, it ended up only half an hour away from my hometown where I was born. Again, wasn't planned, just an ad that my mum saw, and we were stuck in England at the time. So my mum went and had a look at the property, took extra photos. We asked her to leave the deposit until we could travel. And a couple of months later, we just made the move.
Wow, that's so inspiring. So, because like you said, you are originally from Lithuania. So, how did you, let's just rewind, how did you end up in Birmingham? So, what age did you kind of move to the UK?
I was 18, I freshly turned 18. I had no idea what I wanted to do after school. And to be honest, I don't know why we expect 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds to know what they want to do for the rest of their lives. Um, so I had applied to universities in the UK, I had applied to universities in Lithuania,
Hmm.
and up until the last moment, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, and eventually moved to Northampton to go to university. I hated it there. I didn't like it there. I was really lonely. I didn't know it at the time, but I was really depressed as well. I didn't know that what I was experiencing was depression.
Hmm.
Um, and so I dropped out of university, but I didn't want to go home because it felt like I failed. And I don't subscribe to that mindset anymore. But at the time, I'm 18, I've moved a different country. I felt like I did this big thing and failed. So my
Hmm.
mum told me, if you want to stay in the UK, you're welcome to. But obviously, I had to find a way to support myself. And Northampton's a really small town. So I looked for jobs in a larger city and I moved to Birmingham. And despite my efforts to move somewhere else, I just stayed there for almost the entire time that I lived in the UK. So out of my 11 years, 10 of them were spent in Birmingham.
Wow, so you were 11 years in the UK then.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you moved to the UK, could you speak English at the time, or did you have to kind of learn when you got there? Like, how was that for you?
Could speak English, Lithuania, and I would say in Europe in general, people do speak English quite well. The school programs do prioritize English. I think we had it 5 hours a week, which compared to the accounts of my friends and family in the UK, they don't get foreign language lessons in the same way or to the same depth. So
Mhm.
yeah, I could speak English freely. Obviously, my accent would have changed over the years, adapted a little bit more, but that's not on purpose. That's just like a natural thing that happens for some people. There's also a lot of access in Lithuania to foreign media. So YouTube was already a thing at the time, and they didn't dub films in the cinemas. So you'd go to see a film in the cinema, you'd have to watch it in English with subtitles. So we were all exposed to English quite a lot, and it was easy to learn English basically as a teenager or as a child in Lithuania.
Yeah, because your English is amazing. It's like your English is almost better than mine. It's incredible. So well done you for that. It really is. So yeah, I guess like so you're living in Birmingham and then you're kind of exploring this, like you wanted ultimately, I guess, that connection with nature and that almost like more self-reliance in terms of like growing vegetables and living that kind of way of life, and that's why you set up the allotment. So when COVID happened then, like Was that the final straw where you were just like, I need to get out of this country? Like, we need to, do something more on our own terms, live more self-reliant?
Yeah, you could say that. I think being specifically in lockdown just really forces you to face your reality
Mhm.
because on the day to day, you do get distracted. And particularly for me, that was the case. I was going from one thing to another to work, home, doing chores, groceries, laundry, all of that. And then when you're forced to stop and you can't do those things and you are stuck in this rental flat that's growing mold, because absolutely every flat that I'd rented over the time of my living in the UK had mold. I swear, I don't know what it is. There's just no access for people who are not well off to proper living conditions, really, and nobody cares. So imagine that you're sitting in your flat and you can't go anywhere. You can't do the things that you enjoy. You
Mhm.
can't do the things that you don't enjoy. You can't even go to work. There's nothing to distract you. And so my husband said to me, "Listen, I can't carry on like this. We
Mhm.
we got to do something." And fair play. We just started looking more seriously, turned from just this um, theoretical fantasy to concrete plans. And I think the key to that was to do it quickly, to really commit to it. So I handed in my notice. We handed that deposit for this property. Started looking at legalities like taxes and health insurance and stuff like that. Booked a moving van that would take all of our stuff. Handed my notice to the landlord, and here we are.
Wow. So within the time that you made that decision, like, right, this is it now, how long were you actually living in Lithuania? Like, what was that timeline process?
Do you mean in the UK? Do you mean from when we decided to move to when we moved?
Yeah, so like for me and Jack, I think like we literally were like, right, we're going to look at property in Spain. And then within 3 months, we were like living in our property. So like, how long was that kind of process for you when you made that decision and then you're living there?
It was pretty similar. So we moved here in August, start of August, and it would probably be around May that it was okay, we're moving, but we hadn't secured the property quite as soon, I don't think. I think it was just that, okay, we're moving, trying to predict when traveling would be allowed.
Hmm.
So that I could hand in my notice and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it was about 3 months.
Wow, that's awesome. So could you just talk me through, because I know everyone will want to know this, like the kind of the process of like buying a property in Lithuania. And if you don't mind like letting us know like what you paid for your property as well.
Yeah, no problem. I will just preface this by saying that I have no idea what it's like for someone who might not have a Lithuanian citizenship, because that was something that we had to take care of because I wanted the deed to be in both of our names. And
Yeah.
so I had to get additional documents kind of stamped and
Mhm.
translated. But the process itself was really easy. The agreement was drawn up by a notary between the previous owners and myself. And then we just made a date. We came to the appointment, signed some documents. The notary verified handing over of the payment, which we literally paid in cash because it was so cheap, um, minus the deposit as well, because that was already paid. And we had a condition with the previous owners that we would pay for the notary services, but that was just a percentage of the sale,
Mhm.
which again didn't amount to much, and that was that. The notary also does the legal bit where now the ownership is transferred,
Mhm.
and then in Lithuania you also have to declare your permanent residence. So I had to go online and just declare that this is where I live now. So the whole process was really, really easy. And Everyone's shocked. Everyone thinks that I'm missing out a zero when I tell people that this property was €2,800.
No.
So we paid 500 for the deposit, and then we paid the remaining balance when we were here. And I think with the notary fees, it all amounted to about 3,000
Oh my goodness. And that's sorry, that's euros, pounds?
euros. Yeah,
So about
euro.
3,000 euros all in.
Yeah,
Wow, that's incredible. Oh my goodness.
and I don't think you'll find prices like this here now. I
Hmm.
think we just got really lucky.
Hmm.
Although to some people, they'll look at this place, they'll look at the territory and the old house, and they'll think, "Wow, this is like a prison sentence."
Yeah.
Right? I had this woman. Um, I had a vet come out to see my goats,
Uh-huh.
and he brought his wife along. Obviously, I'm not going to tell her to go away, but she come out of the car and she's just like walking around waiting while her husband does his job. And she's walking around, and then she turns to me and she goes, "Wow, this is a nightmare." And I was like, I don't even know how to respond. And when like sometime down the line you come up with a witty response, but at the time I just didn't know what to say. And I had this strong urge to defend myself and defend my choices to this woman that I've never met, that I haven't invited. And she kept saying it. She's like, "Wow, this is a nightmare. So much work. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare." How rude, right? So I get that we spent very little money. And yes, this is a lot of work. This is quite a large territory, which was really overgrown, and the
Hmm.
house is old. So, of course, the work will never end.
Hmm.
And we chose to get animals, some to help us manage, but they're all ultimately friends that
Hmm.
I'm responsible for. So I wouldn't just get rid of them just because it became inconvenient.
Hmm.
But I can't imagine going into somebody's home and looking around, especially someone that I don't know, and going, "Wow, well, I wouldn't live like this. This is horrible."
How rude. That's awful.
But yeah, I think it's all a matter of uh, one man's trash is another man's treasure, right?
Yeah.
So for me, this is what I want to do, and yes, it's hard, but it's worth for all the benefits that I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
Whereas for somebody else, you couldn't pay them any money to move into the countryside and live semi-upgrade like this with no running water and in a house that's really old that constantly needs repairs.
So do you want to like tell me a little bit about your house then? Like what is the setup? Like what's the house like? Do you have outbuildings? Like how much land do you have? Like all that kind of good stuff.
So the house was built in 1946.
Yeah.
It's got two main halves of the house. It's a log house. So old school, just one story, although there's some attic space that has not been touched.
Hmm.
Um,
Have you ever been
it's
up
just
there?
one story. Pardon?
So have you been up to the attic?
I haven't, but my husband has, and I'm kind of afraid to see what's up there.
Oh,
Um, so yeah, just one story in use. And
uh-huh.
in one half of the house is like the living room, kitchen, big area. It used to be separated into small rooms because back in the day as well, people would kind of all live together, got married,
Hmm.
move out. So this house, the previous owner, she was born in this house
Wow.
and she grew up in this house, and then she moved to the village next door. And out of her family, she's the only one who's still living nearby. Um, but you could tell that this was a family with a lot of children because there would be kind of walls built in between places to make some privacy,
Hmm.
um, which we knocked down. And then the other part of the house is some storage and bedroom. Again, there's still a lot of work to do. The land that it's on is on 1.5 hectares, or God, I think it's maybe 3.5 acres or something like that, or 3 acres. I don't really know the imperial measurements that well. Some of it is an old garden that used to have apple and pear trees that,
Mhm.
because it stood so long without management, it turned into like a little woodland. Some of
Wow.
it we chose to dedicate to wilderness ourselves. So a few years back, we ran a project where we raised money to plant some trees because this house is heated by wood.
Mm-hmm.
And we're obviously any builds that we do here, we majorly make out of wood. So as one way to try to give back, planted some trees. What else to tell? There's no running water, as I said. There is an old well that has been cleared out, but it's far from the house and it's not particularly practical. So that's something that's in the plans. We also had a pond dug out. So there was a little pond with lots of fishes and frogs and bugs and stuff like that. And we didn't want to utilize that for ourselves because obviously it's got its own ecosystem established already.
Yeah.
Um, but when it gets really dry, it's hard to get water. And with all the animals, we've got to make sure that we constantly have access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And watering plants is obviously really hard if we don't have enough water and it's really, really dry. So thankfully, we were able to afford to have a pond dug out. It's quite a big pond and you can swim in it and you can use it for water and washing and whatnot. So that's like my main source of water for washing dishes and clothes and watering plants and giving water to the animals. And it's also accessible in the winter because you can just make an opening.
Wow, that's so cool. So do you have to like filter that water at all, or is it filtered enough from like the natural ecosystem?
So Lithuania's got quite a high water table. So the way this pond worked, somebody came with a big excavator and dug a big hole, and then it just filled up
Oh,
because
wow.
it comes through the earth.
That's amazing. It's almost a bit like a spring, really, how it just seeps up through the earth.
Yeah, there's just water in the ground and it comes up. And that's why a lot of people will have a well here because that's the same principle. You just dig a hole and you just dig it deep. And yeah, it kind of filters itself through the earth that way. With the pond, it's obviously open to nature. So you get algae and plants and animals start living in there. So it's not, I'm not sure, I don't think it would have to be tested to see if it's safe for human consumption.
Mhm.
I'm sure you can probably get some kind of filter or clearing thing that you can add to it. Um, hadn't got that far.
Yeah. So in terms of like your drinking water then, where do you get your drinking water from?
At the moment, just fill up in the nearby towns, so my hometown. So asking friends or family to fill up the water there. Just reusing, the big 5 litre jugs
Yeah.
that you can just take with you. I think you guys had a similar setup back when you lived on the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. So how far is your local town then from where you live?
So there are two towns that are approximately the same distance, about 25, 30 kilometers away from us, just in a different direction because we live really close to the border. So everywhere we go, we have to make an effort to go. My hometown is 25 kilometers away, so accessible by car. You can bike there as well. I did bike before I passed my driving test.
Oh, amazing. So how long would that take you in a car? Like kind of, I'm trying to do like the math, 25 kilometers, about half an hour or so?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Depending on conditions in the winter, you got to be careful. It could be icy or it could be really snowy.
yeah.
So yeah, could
And
could take longer.
does your mum live in your hometown still? Is that where your mum's kind of based?
No, no. My mum lives in Vilnius, which is the capital, which is a couple of hours away. She's actually coming to visit tomorrow. So she'll drive up here.
That's nice. So how often do you get to see like your mom and other family in Lithuania?
Um, hard to quantify because it all really depends on circumstances. The first few years we actually didn't get to see each other very much, partly because we were still coming in and out of lockdowns,
Yeah.
partly because it felt like a trek. It always felt like a really big commitment to go to the city to see my mum. And my mum also didn't want to impose, so she was a little bit cautious about kind of trying to offer help. But last year, this is this is such a sad circumstance that led to it, but ultimately it's nice. One of my rabbits got sick, and w- so rabbit vets are not very common.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that there are veterinarians all over the place, but they're mostly specialized cats and dogs. If you need anything that's special like a rabbit, you got to go to Vilnius or another major city, but Vilnius is the closest one. So um, that's how I started traveling to Vilnius a little bit more regularly, and I would stay with my mum. So we kind of reconnected through this circumstance. And the more you do something, the less scary or big it feels.
Yeah.
You no longer see it as this massive trek. Suddenly, it was just part of the routine because this was quite a lot of maintenance. So he had to go for several visits. So yeah, it no longer feels like this huge commitment. So last weekend I went to see my mum because it was her birthday. So this weekend she's coming here. It really depends on availability, but way more often than we did initially when I moved to Lithuania.
Oh, that's really nice. So in terms of like your animals then, like can you talk me through like what animals you have there and initially, because I know like with a lot of homestead it's kind of like the animal has to serve a purpose. But I know like when we met you were vegan. I don't know if you are you still vegan now? Yeah.
Yeah,
So you don't eat the animals like some homesteaders do. So what
no.
animals do you have? And then like, is it because they serve a purpose or is it more because like they're your pets and, family essentially?
Okay, I will go in a chronological order. Good decisions and bad decisions. Essentially, as I said, when we moved here, the plot was really, really overgrown. Like nobody lived here for at least a decade. Um, and yeah, we thought getting some goats would be a good idea so that
Mhm.
they could eat the grass and manage all the growth and kind of keep it at bay. And I looked through the classifieds and saw that not too far away, somebody was basically giving away some goats because they didn't want to nix them. So
Yeah.
they just said, giving some goats away for a bar of chocolate. So we went and picked them up, and they were little. They were so young, they were maybe like 4 months old, really, really cute. And it took some time to develop some trust with them. And then it turned out that goats are not really great for this purpose. Like maybe some breeds of goat are. I can't really speak for all the goats, but these three goats are the most mischievous girls I've ever met. And they will eat exactly what you do not want them to eat. They
Yeah.
will not manage a plot. Goats are generally more like foragers. They'll look for something that they enjoy to eat. What we really needed was sheep, but we didn't know that at the time. But obviously, like you take responsibility for an animal that you take into your home. So now they're grown up. I'm pretty sure they're all heavier than me, stronger than me. So
Mhm.
um, it's a good thing that they know that I'm the person who brings them food, or else it would be like a comical image. When you see a child walking a big dog,
Yeah.
it'd be like that. So
Wow.
then, the year after, the summer after, my husband got really sick, and we couldn't figure out what's wrong. And it turns out that he got encephalitis from being bitten by a tick.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, really, 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 really unpleasant, really terrible. He had to go to the hospital for like a week, which for him was obviously really unpleasant because the language barrier. I couldn't visit because of COVID.
Oh
It
my.
was a whole thing. Because everyone told us, oh, get the encephalitis vaccine, but because of COVID and everything, we just kept putting it off. and then he got sick. And so to help us manage the population again, because the land was overgrown, um, we read that guinea fowl, which is a type of bird, I guess you could call it a farm bird, but they're a bit more wild.
Hmm.
They're similar to partridges, but quite large.
Yeah.
Um, so some people keep them as pest control measure, which is obviously organic, you know. Um, so we had a look into it, and yeah, we just went and got some, built a coop for them, and let them out in the daytime so they go around and eat bugs. They don't just eat ticks; they eat mosquitoes and stuff like that. So they generally keep the population down. So they're a more functional animal. They're not very gentle or homely, so it's hard to say that they're pets, but obviously still we're responsible for them.
Yeah.
And then, unfortunately, with birds like that, you got to be prepared for the fact that some will pass away, some will be maybe snatched by a predator. And what we started thinking of is hatching more of them from the eggs that they lay rather than buying more.
Yeah.
Um, with this old house and being deep in the countryside, the electricity is not really reliable.
Hmm.
So sometimes if there's a storm or like a branch falls on an electric line, then you lose the electricity. So again, running an incubator can be a very sensitive thing. So what we did instead is get some silky chickens. And silky chicken is a decorative breed of chicken. They're miniature and they're kind of like fluffy looking, which is why they're called
Yeah.
silkies. But they make really good broody chickens. They sit on the eggs very well, and then they look after the young really well. So that's what we did. That's how we ended up with chickens because we wanted them to hatch the guinea fowl eggs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Who else have I not got? Rabbits. Rabbits. I just always dreamt of having a rabbit. I love the idea of having a rabbit. Couldn't really get one because living in a flat, there's not that much space, and
Mm.
you couldn't really, in the rental flat as well, completely proof it in terms of furniture and stuff like that. Obviously, you don't want them to ruin all the wiring in the flat as well. So went and got some rabbits, and I love rabbits. I would recommend a rabbit to anyone who wants a pet with character.
Yeah.
Because again, some of them can be really cuddly and really gentle and really fun, and some of them really don't want to be touched. But if you don't mind that, if you just enjoy watching them be their chaotic selves, rabbits are amazing. Rabbits are just amazing animals. They're really clever in their own way. Some of them really mischievous, some of them really sweet and gentle. Um, so yeah, so that's how we got rabbits. And then the last addition to our homestead were some sheep. So like I said, we failed with the goat. Turns
Yeah.
out what we needed was sheep. So we researched which breed would be good for grazing,
Hmm.
which breed are kind of manageable. And we got a breed called Skudde, which is like a Scandinavian, sometimes called Viking sheep. They're quite small compared to the sheep that are grown for meat. Some people breed them for wool, as they do grow quite woolly in the winter. So this year I had the pleasure of shearing the sheep for the first time.
Wow.
So that was fun. So it's just a small flock. We've got six girls. Got three mums and their three girls,
Oh,
and they were born last year, and now they're all about the same size. And they're quite funny. They do well with grazing the land, and I move them around using an electric fence. But they can be really affectionate, and be just looking at them browse around and jump around, and sometimes they get, you know how dogs get zoomies.
yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sheep can get zoomies too. So yeah, it's all. I mean, for me, I just love watching the animals, and we also get a lot of wildlife around here, so it's nice to see birds in the summer, and you get roe deer walking around, and unfortunately foxes and
Mm.
polecats and stuff like that. But you know, it's part of nature. You can't really
Yeah.
want to be in nature and then reject these unpleasant parts of it.
Yeah. So if you could go back, like I don't ever say regret anything, but Do you feel like there's an animal that you maybe wouldn't have got initially if you'd have known like what it was like to kind of nurture that animal? And I know for me with the goats, like we went through the same thought process. Like when we were living on the mountain, it was like, yeah, let's get goats. They'll help keep the land, or the land down, the grass, especially when it's the summer season and there's the risk of fire. And yeah, they ate everything but the grass, like you said. They ate all my vegetables, they ate all of the flowers that I was growing. They would be up on top of the roof, they would be escaping all the time. Like, as much as I loved them, I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, like this was a mistake. I don't know if
Mhm.
you feel like that too with any of the animals.
I think yeah, from a practical standpoint, we probably wouldn't get goats
Hmm.
if we'd known. But it's hard to say that out loud because they're my goats now. They're like
I
my
understand.
children. You know,
Yeah.
I love them and I'm attached to them and I care for them. So yeah, we wouldn't get goats in general.
Yes.
But it's hard to say that now because these three goats in particular, I really care and love for.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. Because I guess like in some homesteads, they might use the goats for the cheese or the milk, but that's not part of your kind of choice. So yeah, I totally appreciate what you're saying. They
Yeah,
are
if it
awesome.
weren't for an attachment, I would maybe like get rid of the goats.
Yeah.
Well, like sell them on or find a place for them to live out their dreams or whatever. But I don't know. It's a hard thing to do. If push comes to shove, I would absolutely find them a home. Like if I couldn't care for all of the animals and I had to pick someone to get rid of, it would be either chickens or goats,
Yeah.
just to kind of reduce the load. But as long as I can, I will try to give them a really nice home. And
Oh.
they do eat grass. You have to be really honest and you have to really control where they can and cannot go.
Yeah, yeah, we used to find it was just so difficult trying to like keep them in. They were just like escape artists. Like no matter
Yeah,
how high we built the fence, like electrified the fence, like they would just find a way out. I don't know how they did it, but yeah, they are. I mean, they're great personalities, and like each one so unique in their personality as well. We had like when we first moved to the mountain, we had two goats. But unfortunately, they escaped and literally just ran off in the mountain. We just couldn't find them. We spent days searching. So we got two more goats. They were brothers. And one of them sadly passed away, and I don't know what caused him to pass away. Like we just found him one day in the pen. It was really sad. But then the lonely goat, he became basically attached to one of our dogs, Leo. I think you've met Leo. I don't know if you
hmm.
did meet Leo actually. But yeah,
No,
he
I didn't.
you did, didn't you? Yeah, because you house sat for us as well. And him and Leo just got this incredible bond together. And he just thought he was a dog. Like him and Leo would just go running around like the mountain together. He'd just follow him around. And it's just such a sweet bond. It was so nice to watch. Super cheeky. Used to love getting on with the cats as well. They'd be like kissing noses with the cats and yeah, as much I love the goats, I do miss them, and sometimes I did begrudge them, but again, they ended up like we got three more goats to kind of be friends with Sonic, and unfortunately, again, they just escaped and just ran off into the mountain, and we just couldn't, Jack spent
How
days.
recent?
That was last year, yeah, probably about 3 months
Oh,
before
okay.
we came from the mountain, and they just ran off. And like we spent
Oh,
days like looking for them, but where we used to live, like it was so
yeah,
vast. I mean, we'd be driving around all the track, and I just had peace of it, thinking they're living their best life. Like literally, they're gonna
yeah.
be in the mountains, eating as much. They used to love like all of the asparagus scrub and stuff like that.
Mhm.
It was great actually for them to clear on the land, but yeah, I do miss them in some ways. But they were blooming like every day it'd be like, oh, the goats are out again.
Yeah, they're so clever. It's amazing.
Yeah.
People really, I think with animals that people classify as farm animals, people really discount how clever they are, how much personality they can have. Because people will readily see that in their dogs and their cats and their guinea pigs, even.
Yeah.
But when it comes to farm animals, people just think of them as this like thing, this abstract thing. But they're so great. They're
Hmm.
so funny. They can be a handful for sure. They can be a source of pain in your backside, but I don't know, like I love animals and I love like visiting places where you can like petting zoos and stuff like that. But until I got my own goats and my own sheep and my own rabbits, I never knew the intricacies, like how clever and how funny they can be and how much they recognize you. Because these sheep, compared to goats, sheep are a lot more sheepish, right? They'll run off, they get scared easily.
Yeah.
And so my biggest concern was that getting them to trust us would be a problem, like that they would try and run away, that they would try and, I don't know, cause some chaos. And so, but it only took less than a week from when we got them to here, for them to start kind of recognizing me and following me, because they, again, recognize you as a source of food,
Hmm.
even though they might not entirely um, trust you straight away. And they're not, well, a couple of them will come up to me and will get a head scratch. But generally, they're a flock animal. They seek safety in each other.
Yeah.
They understand that you're the human that gives them food and whatnot, but they're still wary of you.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just amazing that they recognize you. But it's not what you wear. And my goats, if somebody comes in to visit, and you can give them a handful of grain, the goats will absolutely sell their soul for it. They will absolutely go, I don't care who this is, I will eat this. My
Yeah.
sheep, absolutely not. If
Wow.
they see me, if I'm standing next to someone they don't know, they don't approach me. It doesn't matter how much food you got. They
Wow.
know instantly that this is a stranger, and they haven't built up trust with them, so that they won't come up to me, the person that they do trust.
Wow. Amazing, really, isn't it? These animals are so intelligent.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so what does your like day to day look like then? So like give me like a picture of like Kat's day to day on the homestead, like from waking up to going to bed.
Okay. It's a little bit chaotic right now because I'm doing something. I agreed to cover for a local yoga teacher. So I'm
Hmm.
not going to do my day now, but generally speaking, you wake up in the morning, you get a coffee. I like my coffee.
Hmm.
And there's a myth that you have to get up with like a break of dawn and you do the animal straight away, but it is not entirely true. What you got to make sure is that the animals have access to some kind of food and water.
Yeah.
So whether it's pasture or hay, you don't have to then get up and start running around at 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, so yeah, I have my coffee and then I go around with the sheep. Generally speaking, because I use the electrified fence, it's
Hmm.
either just leaving them to it or moving them to a different area. With the goats, again, if I'm at home that day, letting them out in the controlled setting,
Hmm.
usually try to get them somewhere where there's a lot of growth, so they do still help out a little bit. With the rabbits, I've got an outdoor tractor, so a little enclosed bit where they can feel safe and that no predator will get them.
Hmm.
And then they can graze all day. That can just be moved along to where there's grass. Again, only if I'm home, so that I can keep an eye on it, so there's no predator lurking around, and there's no, if it's really sunny, I don't want them to get a heat stroke or anything like that. Um, Guinea fowl get let out, and they just run around and they do their own thing. And in the evening, I just had to make sure to get them all in and lock the door, because again, they would be vulnerable to predators otherwise. Goats go in the evening, and everyone goes in to sleep. Everyone gets fed. their hay topped up, their water topped up, to again make sure that I don't have to wake up at the crack of dawn and try and rush around and feed everyone. And then in the daytime, it really depends on what needs doing. It depends on the time of the year. So in the spring, before you have a lot of plants growing, you might be doing some DIY projects, you might be mowing grass. Obviously, I work from home as well. So depending on which work needs doing, I might be in the house doing work, or I might be out doing things in the summer. There's vegetable plot work, there's mowing grass always. Honestly, like it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And yeah, you manage that day to day. In the winter, there's less work outdoors. So try and catch up on indoor projects and work indoors. And you just gotta, in terms of managing animals, make sure that their water hasn't frozen,
Mhm.
and feed them a bit more because they don't naturally have access to pasture and stuff like that. So you've got to make sure they've got plenty of hay so that they can sustain themselves in the winter.
Wow, okay. So it's busy. It's non-stop on the homestead, isn't it? I know that feeling.
Yeah, I haven't really had a break in 5 years. I I can afford to go away for a couple of days at the moment, where if I need to, for example, like visit my mum for her birthday, so long as again I make sure that everybody's got food and water, everybody's got access to pasture if they are safe from the predators. But say if I'm going away for the weekend, I wouldn't let the birds out because I can't lock them in for the night.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and ideally, the plan is to build better infrastructure so that they're a little bit more autonomous, and I can go away for a longer amount of time because I do need a break.
Yeah, it does get overwhelming. And that was kind of something I wanted to ask you is like, how do you cope with that kind of like responsibility really of, managing a homestead with on this scale, with all those animals and um yeah, just general life. Like how do you kind of make that work for you?
I just recognize that at the end of the day, this is a choice that I made, and a choice that I continue making every day.
Hmm.
Because no one's making me do this. I could sell the animals or just let them roam and go and rent a flat somewhere and find a job and go back to the kind of life that I had before.
Hmm.
But I'm making this choice because this is what I prefer and this is what I want. And I recognize that, yeah, it can be hard, but it also has a lot of benefits. And even just when I was talking about the animals, just the pleasure of sometimes being in their company and watching them, or the pleasure of watching seasons change, the pleasure of kind of watching a plant go from seed to seedling to a full plant to harvesting the fruits of your labor. I find that really rewarding. And for now, I'm happy to choose this life. And
Hmm.
if things change in the future, I'm not saying that I will be doing this forever. Like people change their minds and people's circumstances sometimes force them to do something differently. But for the moment, I'm just trying to embrace that this is a choice that I made, and I'm gonna do my best, and try and I guess avoid burnout by also finding ways to take care of myself and finding ways that reward me mentally. So I do a lot of running, and obviously I'm a yoga teacher and I practice yoga a lot. And in the summer, I try and go for a walk or forage or go for a swim in the pond. So little moments like that where you are focusing on yourself because everything else depends on you. So you gotta sustain yourself to give that energy to the homestead and the animals and everything that's around you, really.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that because mindset is such a huge thing, I think, with this way of life. And I think not many people really consider that maybe when initially looking to live this way of life. I think, it's everyone's like so many people I'll meet and they'll just say, you're living my dream, you're living my dream. And, and And yes, in a sense, but it does come with its challenges, and especially like, the mindset, especially when you're living remotely as well. I think that's what I've struggled with, especially on the mountain, is just that isolation and that sense
Hmm.
of like responsibility and self-reliance in a sense. Like, although that can be a very freeing thing, for me, it's also got that, the opposite where it can be quite trapping as well. And
Yeah.
as much as isolation is beautiful and living in nature and is very peaceful and it's wonderful, it's also that kind of balance of like, yes, but you do need to kind of, I think, we are humans can be meant for community, and I can totally see like why people live in communes. Like that's not really my thing, but I can see why, because we kind of like rely on each other. So as much as like I was kind of thinking I want to be self-reliant, actually when we moved off grid, it's like realizing how important like community is, even just for that like mind of just, having people nearby in case something goes wrong. And yeah, there is like a big mindset kind of shift I think you have to go through to kind of live this way of life. So it's really interesting hearing you say like how you kind of look after your mindset, with running, with yoga. You do a lot of like breath work as well, don't you? I think. Yeah, it's
Mm.
super
I
important.
do agree with you. It's something to definitely consider for people who want to live this lifestyle, that this is not a popular way of living or a common way of living, because even those who want to live in the countryside can't necessarily do it,
Hmm.
because the way society has developed in the last, let's say, 100 years, is to kind of center everything in big cities. So
Hmm.
naturally, people survive by flocking to cities, because that's where they can earn a living.
Hmm.
And you do what you got to do to survive. It's not always a choice that you can make. And I recognize the privilege that, okay, I can live like this. But that does not mean that anyone can just click their fingers one day and move like this, even no matter how much they want to.
Yeah.
Um, but there is undoubtedly this isolation and a lack of community, not because people necessarily don't want to connect, but because there are so few people, particularly in Lithuania. Living in the countryside is not a popular choice,
Hmm.
because it's hard to have a job. It's hard to have a remote job, or it's hard to have a job locally, like in a village or a nearby town. Um, it's hard to live away from the city, because that's where you also get amenities like the hospitals and the well, everything really. Um, so yeah, I think lack of community can be really difficult for a lot of people, and particularly if you have an expectation of it and then you don't get it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So how have you kind of found a community out there? Like, are they kind of like, do you have friends nearby, or have you kind of like, I guess in a sense what I did as well is like create an online community. So, at least feeling that connection with people who are on the same kind of journey as you. Like, how have you kind of coped with that?
Well, my community is small, you could say. Essentially, we had a couple of people reach out to us because I used to post a bit on Instagram, and we had a website documenting this choice.
Hmm.
People reached out who also made a similar thing, but they don't live very nearby. So they're within driving distance, but we don't see each other that often in person because they're not right there next to us, and these are also similar young couples who bought a homestead and are kind of like doing repairs and trying to grow their veggies or keep animals and things like that. Um, but this is just to illustrate, how uncommon that is. There's
Hmm.
no one around us doing this, and actually not that many young people in general around us. A lot of the people who live in the countryside around us, they didn't choose this. They live here because that's just where they'd always lived, and that's they don't have a different option.
Hmm.
So in terms of connecting to people who chose this, it was over the internet, and we did meet, and we do try to keep in touch and help each other out. Um, but it's not immediately around us.
Hmm.
Um, I also had to expand my understanding of who I consider kind of like a neighbor, right? Because this is so rural that anyone in 5 to 10 kilometer radius is basically a neighbor.
Yeah, yeah.
It's no longer just someone next door. And even though these are people, like I said, they're not necessarily going to be your age or with the same mindset or with the same circumstances. But I think people in the countryside, whether they chose to move here, whether they lived here their whole life, they do understand the value of community. And I basically had never been rejected when I asked for help.
Hmm.
So unless somebody absolutely cannot help me, they never say no. You know, whether I need some advice or where the car is stuck in the mud, you know, or I need a lift somewhere because I don't have a driving license, or this is someone, well, I can't even think of another example. But people here kind of understand that they all that people are far and few between. So having that kind of mindset of kindness and helpfulness, I think, is very telling of this area of Lithuania in the countryside.
Yeah, I completely relate to that just from like being in Spain. It's like I think like that's it's almost like a beautiful thing is like when you're living in like a remote location, like you kind of you forget about all these, you know, people's political opinions, people's like all that breaks away and you're just looking at each other in terms of like how can we help each other and support each other. It doesn't matter what your politics views are or like all that kind of stuff. Like you just kind of break that down because you become almost like dependent on each other. And again, it's like even with us in Spain, like we are lucky to have a big expat community. And I'm friends with like people from all walks of life, all different political views, like all this kind of, it doesn't matter because you need each other out here. And even like with not speaking the like a difficult, difficult in the language barrier, so to speak, between like me and the Catalans or the Spanish. Like there's that mutual respect for each other, especially like, we're living in this same area. Like, the farmers like which come and give us fruit that they've picked from the trees, or when we'd had like trees fall down in the track and I was 8 months pregnant, like one of the local farmers was on the phone to like the agent rurals getting the trees moved out the track. It's just that kind of mutual respect you have for each other. And I think, yeah, like your closest neighbor could be 5 kilometers away. Like it's just being able to look after each other in a sense. And I think that's really important. And I think you do find that wherever you go, you've just got to kind of open yourself up to that and be open to, like, I think when me and Jack moved off grid initially, we were very naive in the sense of like, it's just me and Jack. We don't need anyone else. Like, I don't need society. I don't need friends. I don't need family. I don't need neighbors. But actually, like, you really do, in a sense, need that like community. If something goes wrong, like, we lived through a fire, like our neighbor, when we break down in the mountains, he'd come and get us. Like so many times, like we'd need to lean on people for help. So yeah, it's just interesting because I guess like, do you have like an expat community out there in terms of like for English people, or I'm guessing not really?
No, no. One of the people that did find us that, I said also couples that I bought Homestead is a couple with the guy is from Wales and his partner is Lithuanian and they moved to Lithuania. But it's rare. It's really not that common,
Yeah.
particularly in the countryside. Like in the city, I can understand because people can come and work for an English speaking company or people might come and study, but it's very uncommon to see an English speaker or like I don't know, like a West Europe person
Yeah.
here in this part of Lithuania. Obviously, there's a lot of this part of the country is quite unusual. It's right next to the border with Belarus. It's next to the border with Latvia, And this is also where the nuclear power plant used to be. So back in the day, there was a big influx of people who came to work at the power plant. So there's a lot of population from Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, and because of the high number of Russian speakers as well, when the war broke out in Ukraine, we had a lot of people who moved here
Mhm.
because, circumstances. So there there are people from different places. It's not a very kind of Lithuanian centric place in
Mhm.
Lithuania, but in terms of English speakers, it's not very common at all.
Wow. So like how do you make it work financially for you then? Because obviously you are so rural and remote. Like how do you kind of make it sustain itself financially?
Um, Internet access is
Mhm.
key.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said, if there's a storm and you don't have electric, you don't have internet, and you just got to deal with it. So I'm quite lucky that my jobs, apart from teaching yoga, which has to happen on the schedule, most of the jobs I am quite flexible, and I do a combination of different jobs, which I think helps me from a mental standpoint to keep things varied,
Yeah.
but also helps me because then, if one thing doesn't work out, this is not all of my eggs in one basket.
Yes. Yes. Have those multiple streams of income coming in.
Yeah, yeah. But again, like with moving here, I have been quite lucky. I'm not trying to discount my hard work or my skill, but not everyone has the skills for doing things that are online. We need people who fix cars, and we need people who work in medicine, or do massages and do hair. There are certain professions you just can't make um, work in an online space.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I am quite lucky that I can do something not only online, but something that I actually enjoy, and I'm not just doing data input or some kind of office work online that doesn't really engage my mind at all.
Yeah. That's really good. So in terms of like online work, what kind of online work do you do? Is it kind of like virtual assistant type work or because I know you're a writer, so do you do like copywriting for people?
Yeah, yeah. I back in Birmingham, I back when this was all a dream and we were thinking of moving to Wales or thinking of moving to Spain, there was a thought of, well, how are we going to make income? Because we're going to be remote and also not speaking Spanish properly. So what are we going to do? And I initially put up some like my profile on Upwork and Fiverr,
Hmm.
to say that I could write vegan recipes or I could write an article about yoga because I was already a yoga teacher at the time. And little by little, it kind of built up from there. So some people just wanted a blog article, some people wanted copywriting text on their website, um, some people wanted recipes, and you'd be surprised how many people who create recipes, um, they they outsource that kind of work, whether it's for like a meal plan subscription or an app or a website. And I don't actually even do the recipe creation anymore, but I met an amazing person through this job, and she really appreciated like the work that I did. So I ventured more into the writing. I've merged the recipes and the writing. So now I manage her blog. I also offered translation services, just because I speak English and I speak Russian and Lithuanian. So I do a bit of that, and as of recently, as you know, I'm also doing a little bit of virtual assistance, but that's just my first experience with it. Yeah, I'm quite happy to pursue different opportunities and try anything and see what sticks and what I'm good at. And I will happily admit if there's something that I'm not doing a good job of or something that I'm not enjoying. Because when you're in a situation like this and you've got to take care of your inner peace a little bit and make things sustainable, I think it's a privilege to be able to choose, and it's a privilege to be able to kind of uh, direct yourself to somewhere that you can actually somewhere that you can stay for a while.
Hmm.
I get that. Again, it's not a choice for everybody, and some people will take anything for a job, and I appreciate that. So really, I've been really lucky that my skills led themselves to that online space, and that I've met people who took a chance on me and let me kind of develop my skills as I'm getting the job done. So yeah, it all just kind of came together.
Oh, it's amazing. Because you really nicely wrote us like a blog article as well, which we are going to post on Off Grid Only, and we'll share like a link to it in this podcast. So you say like really nicely in your blog, like how this lifestyle has grown you into and changed you as a person. Like, how would you say that this lifestyle, this way of living has shaped you into the person you are today?
Awesome question. I think similar to what you said earlier, I think I was somewhat naive when I moved,
Hmm.
and there are certain realities that I had to face, um, just in terms of, yeah, community and relationships and the the mental work that goes into managing such a huge place,
Hmm.
because you don't really think about it as an ongoing thing when you dream of it.
Yeah.
But on the day-to-day basis, you're thinking, okay, this needs doing, that needs doing, this needs prepping so that it can be done the week after. This needs ordering so that it can arrive in time for growing season. A
Hmm.
car needs servicing and snow needs shoveling, and I need to email the council about the road and all of that. And it get really overwhelming. So there's a lot of mental work that goes into things
Hmm.
that is invisible on the outside. But also, it changed me in the sense that it showed me how resilient I can be,
Hmm.
because I'm doing things that I never thought I had the skills to do. I'm living a lifestyle that no one could have predicted I would be living. I was actually, even being a yoga teacher and runner, I was never an athletic person, not as a child, not in my teens, not in my early 20s. I didn't really do any kind of physical activity. I lived in the city always. I had this, I guess, fear of missing out, where I'd hang out with people at any opportunity, because I thought, this like you have this hunger as a young person, to try and go everywhere and see everything and spend time with everyone. Whereas now it's the opposite, and spent so much of my time on my own, and I'm voluntarily moving my body for pleasure. Right, no one's making me do this, and I'm living in the house with no running water, and I'm dealing with things like electricity, power cuts, and overgrown areas, and listening to weird knocking sounds in the car, and making sure that all the animals are healthy and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's not to toot my own horn, but sometimes I think, well, I'm actually doing a pretty good job, considering like not anyone could manage this.
No,
Do you ever feel like that?
yeah, I think you should be very proud of yourself. Like, when people would say to me sometimes, like, oh, you're so brave, and like I really admire what you're doing and your strength. And sometimes you have to like take a step back and look at yourself and think, yeah, I really should be proud of myself, for taking all this on and for living it. There's a difference between people who, want to live this lifestyle and who actually are living this lifestyle, and you're testament to your resilience. And I think you should be very proud of yourself. So yeah, I'm going to give you like a virtual hug for everything that you've been through. Because
Yeah, for you
it's
guys as well, I think it's so much more layered because obviously you have two children, and for me, well, I have animals, but it's not the same, and I just basically have to take on responsibility for myself, right? And
Mhm.
worst comes to worst, I'm just going to be doing less of something 1 year, or kind of adjusting my own lifestyle. But for you, you have that extra pressure with the kids, so double the bravery, I guess, to do it the way you do. And you were telling me the other day how you guys made the decision to move from the mountain because you got to prioritize certain things, and similar to like how it, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like I said, sometimes giving up on one thing can feel like a failure when it really is not. Like, oh, I went to university and I dropped out. Oh no. But at the end of the day, you got to make the decisions that are best for you at the time.
Absolutely. No, I think that was something me and Jack both went through mentally, was that feeling of like, have we failed? But then I don't like to, like, when I was younger, I'd like, you'd regret things, but I don't like to live in regret. And I always think there's everything happens for a reason. And, it's not like we've failed, it's just that circumstances change and you adapt to those circumstances, don't you? And I think that's all part of this way of life and this mindset as well, is just constantly having to adapt to new challenges, to your environment, to, anything that life throws at you. You've just got to try and find a way to adapt to it and work through it. And yeah, I don't see things as failure now. I just think everything's a learning curve. Like, what did I gain from that experience? Like, I'm glad I had that experience. This property that we're living in, it's not, the rural mountain, it's still rural, but we're still growing vegetables, we're still sticking to that inner like ethos, that inner, I don't know what the right word is, but we've
And
still got
spirit,
that, what's that, sorry?
in spirit.
Yeah, in spirit, like we're still living the dream. It's just a different dream, but we still are homesteading, we're still trying to be more self-sufficient. And I don't know if you can ever be 100% self-sufficient, but at least trying to strive to that and not rely on the system so much and not be so dependent on, all these corporate hungry energy companies and, eating all that toxic foods that like sprayed by Monsanto and all that kind of stuff. Like just trying to be a bit more in control, I think, of our life. And yeah, I think like we can start to wrap up soon, but one thing I want to ask as well is like, are you feeling that you're living in your soul alignment? Like compared to the person who was living in that flat in Birmingham, to the person like, living in this beautiful rural Lithuanian homestead, does your soul feel at peace? Does your soul feel like you're living in purpose?
I think I am doing the best I can in
Hmm.
that regard. Like you said, it's not likely that it's ever going to be 100% perfect because you can't quite, even just you can't really live fully self-sufficiently, um, and not rely on earning any money or buying anything.
Hmm.
And, living here, you have to have a car and you have to fuel it somehow. And
Hmm.
so it's about doing your best. And I think the same goes for stuff like being vegan, for example, or um, being aligned with zero waste mentality. Because at the end of the day, you can only do what you can do.
Hmm.
So, as much as you can avoid food waste or avoid buying plastic, sometimes you will contribute to it one way or another.
Yeah,
And it's about still doing something better than nothing.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm not 100% happy with how things are.
Hmm.
I'd be lying to say that, oh yeah, this is I'm like I'm doing absolutely everything and I'm happy with everything that I have to do or that I get to do.
Hmm.
But certainly in comparison, it's a much better alternative. And I can only hope that I can improve on it going forward. I can only hope that, I have the privilege to keep living this lifestyle and improving it, and setting myself up, or like kind of, I guess, compensating for the things that I do at least.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nicely put. So for people who want to like follow your journey or, in terms of like if they want to work with you, like yoga, like having yoga classes, utilizing your skills for copywriting or VA services and stuff, like how would people kind of get in contact with you to one, follow your journey and then two, kind of work with you?
The thing is, I don't really post much about this, the lifestyle itself. Sometimes I want to, but you got to prioritize where you put your energy. So maybe one day I'll pick it back up. But if somebody wants to contact me, most of my socials are set to the same account, which is Bend and Ascend,
Yeah.
all one word. This came from back when I was doing rock climbing and yoga, so that tied both of them in. But it can be just a general allegory for how you have to be flexible in life in order to kind of take it to the next level, if you will. So yeah, Bend and Ascend on Instagram, Facebook, bendandassett.com for the website. If you're interested in yoga, you can obviously take some classes with me. You can sign up to my yoga newsletter from the website. You can read my personal and yoga posts on my website as well. And yeah, you can just come say hello.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure to like post all of that information in the show notes and then also like link it in your blog as well. But I think the last thing I'd like to ask you, which the off-grid only community would be most interested in, is if I wanted to buy a property in Lithuania that's rural, like where would you direct me to go, or what would be like kind of your advice with finding this kind of property? Maybe not necessarily as cheap as what you got, because I just think that's incredible, but like how would you go about that?
Uh, God, I'm a terrible person to ask because things just kind of fell into my lap. I think first and foremost, you need someone on your side who speaks the language.
Yeah.
Either, moving with a partner who's Lithuanian or having someone who can help you navigate these legal parts so they can set things up, set your bank accounts and set your health insurance or home insurance and stuff like that, and make sure that everything that you are getting done, you're not accidentally getting yourself into trouble or setting yourself up for a commitment of some kind that you shouldn't be doing. So yeah, get somebody who speaks the language. The second thing I'll say is lower your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we all want everything. We want the perfect off-grid experience or all of the amenities, but you're not going to get that. You're rarely going to get everything that you want if
Mm-hmm.
that's the journey that you choose to follow. So you've got to lower your expectations and learn to go with the punches.
Amazing. Oh, well, Kat, like honestly, thank you so much for joining me today and for, telling us all about your amazing life and what you've been through and your homestead. Like it sounds absolutely amazing. And I know that like it's hard work, but what you're creating, I think you said this in your blog, it's yours and it's something that you own. Like, no one's going to take it away from you. It's your baby, essentially. That's how I see a homestead. It's like this creation that you're kind of constantly nurturing and constantly putting your time, your effort, your energy, blood, sweat, tears. Like, it's truly yours, and it's really beautiful to see. So thank you so much for joining me today. And like I said, if anyone wants to kind of work with Kat, like, have yoga classes, like I can vouch for Kat. She is incredible. She's helping us out with Off Grid with with VA services. So, she is amazing in so many different ways. So we will link all of that in the show notes and in your blog post. And yeah, like I think if that's everything, is there anything that you would like to add?
No, just thank you for having me. As I said, I don't know where it came from. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and sometimes I fantasize about being interviewed on a podcast. And so, in a way, you make this little fantasy come true. So, thank you for that. Again, it just made me introspect a little bit about my experience. And if one person listens to it and it helps them, then I'd be happy.
Aw, honestly, you're so inspiring, and I really, really admire everything that you do, and you should be super proud of yourself. So, yes, I will love you and leave you. And thank you so much again for joining me. And yeah, we will speak soon.
Thank you. Speak very soon. Thanks, Georgia.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.